Moana 2 is the new film from Disney, and it's a sequel to 2016's Moana, which was a groundbreaking movie for Disney at the time. That film was set in ancient Polynesia and told the story of Moana, the strong-willed daughter of a chief of a coastal village who's chosen by the ocean itself to reunite a mystical relic with the goddess Te Fiti. And when blight strikes her island, Moana sets sail in search of Maui, a legendary demigod, in hopes of returning the relic to Te Fiti and saving her people. And at the time, Moana was pretty original and a great movie that a lot of people liked. It had a strong-willed female protagonist who wasn't a princess or possessed any supernatural powers. She was a normal girl from an island with a strong will of her own. She loved her family, had a bunch of cute pets like other Disney princesses, and had a strong connection to land and water. Moana also had really great music, which was a big selling point, as well as a distinct animation style that was very tropical with aquatic, ocean, and sand-based imagery. The movie didn't have as memorable of a villain, though. Te Kā is the main antagonist of Disney's 56th full-length animated feature film, and once the benevolent island goddess Te Fiti, when her heart was stolen by the demigod Maui, she became a destructive lava demon. And Moana 2 also suffers from the same villain issue. There really isn't a present diegetic on-screen antagonist that makes you worried or makes you feel like the stakes are increasing. I do think Moana 2 is worse, however, because it misses a lot of what the first one had that was so great. What I did like about the first Moana is the variety of places the characters visit. It made even the lava demon villain, who isn't on screen that much, still feel like a viable threat. Moana 2 is really bad in my opinion because it doesn't have what made the first film good. The first film, by comparison, is really lightning in a bottle. It's a great concept that worked with great characters, songs, really cool environments you couldn't get in any other Disney film, and cute animals, of course, and a fun buddy dynamic between Maui and Moana, but none of that really works here, and it's incredibly hard to repeat. Moana 2 eschews everything that came before it. And apparently this sequel, which came out 8 years after the original, was supposed to originally be a Disney Plus TV series before it was converted into a feature film, which might explain the loose and short, simple plot and how boring this movie is. So today, let's talk about Moana 2. Let's break it down and talk about what doesn't work and why Moana 2 is much worse and forgettable than the first one, and how even little kids deserve way better. Now, I think this movie falls more in line with Kung Fu Panda 4, in that it's a sequel that has a lot less of what the previous films have offered you. You have a less interesting villain here. You have a main character going on an adventure that's less thrilling than it was in past movies. A big issue here is the setup. This movie takes forever to get going. And if you have little kids, I think they're going to be bored right away. Most of the first act is just Moana recalling what she did in the last movie. And I was so bored, guys. She's just singing about what she did, how she teamed up with Maui and restored the oceans or whatever. It's just all her recalling and talking about her past victories, but none of that is doing anything here. I really would have liked if the movie opened with this cool cold open that gets you interested. The closest thing we get to moving the story along is cutting to Maui, who's tied up in some underground cave. At least we think it's some underground cave, and he's speaking to some demigod who has him tied up. And I wish this was the first scene because it would have had me interested. I would have thought, why is Maui tied up? Like, what's going on? He's this demigod. But they wait till like 20 minutes into the movie to get to this. So most of the first act is just so boring. And to be honest, this part of the movie pissed me off because I thought we were at least going to get a villain here, but it turns out the woman who has Maui tied up in a cave isn't even a villain. She's just trapped there and can only get out if Moana frees her. Or to do that, Moana has to touch this rock at the bottom of the ocean, which will allow the cities to rise out of the ocean. Another thing I hated about this film is we never even see this city or island or the people on it that Moana has to find and reunite these people and reconnect the islands. That's the goal of this movie. Moana is this wayfinder, this human whose destiny is to connect all of these lands and people who've been lost, but we never even really see any of the people on the other islands who've been lost. At the end, she just dives into the water, swims down, and touches a rock, and she brings up the island, and that's it. They also drag out the end where they fake Moana being dead, where Maui's holding her and you think she's drowned, and obviously she's not. I mean, come on, they're not going to kill Moana. So none of it really just feels remotely interesting or like it's believable. And I get it, this is a movie with demigods and not talking tattoos, but you get what I'm saying. The point is, this movie just feels so unbelievable for a movie that can even do all these things, and it's just disappointing. If you want to make a better sequel, you need to introduce new biomes, new worlds, new designs. You need to add something that the previous movie did not have. This movie literally reuses the Kakamora from the first film, only to explain, oh, they're actually good guys trying to get back to their home, and that's it. It's not like it does anything new with them, except they just explain that they're good guys. And there's so much explanation here. Like, there's one scene where the Kakamora are making little designs out of their coconut shells, kind of telling a story, and one guy is just explaining what their art is. He's like, oh, the coconuts are shaping like an island. That means that they were lost trying to get home. And it's just so much freaking explanation. I wish this movie just had cool new things without having so much explanation. All this exposition really just takes me out of the movie. It's Disney. They can make anything they want. They can animate really cool things, and instead they just tell or choose to tell us stories. Just tell us, show us, don't tell us. This movie really needed more emotion and more connection. The only thing they really harp on here is Moana having to leave home again, and she has this little sister who doesn't want her to leave the island. Yeah, it's cute. It's a little kid who doesn't want her to go, and you hear Moana like, little sis, but it's really not enough. It's not like anyone's in danger, or if Moana doesn't reconnect the islands, anything will happen. There's no real threat here. I didn't really understand why Moana, and she's not even in a rush to leave. The whole first 20 minutes, she's just like, I have to go, I have to build a new boat. But it's not like there's any danger. There's no, we have to do this or our island will disappear. They had stakes. This movie might have been better. On top of that, the new characters Moana is surrounded with are so bad. They're just the most boring one-trait characters who do nothing for the story. There's this raft builder who gives off the vibes that she might even like Moana. That could be an interesting angle to explore, but they don't do anything with that. Not that they have to. I'm sure people would be annoyed if they do. But this rapping girl raft builder brings nothing new to the story. She just raps and helps build a raft, and that's it. Then there's this strong man who's obsessed with Maui. He's practically in love with him. And I thought this would build to a moment where he ends up somehow saving Maui, and then the demigod who thinks this guy's a bit weird or a stalker will lighten up and realize he's just a nice guy who's a super fan, but that never happens at all. Then there's this farmer who they bring along who's all curmudgeonly and hates everything. He's stubborn, and he's an old man. And they bring him on the ship so he can help get them food and farm. And he starts to like it, and he likes being on the water. But for what? His arc is so simple. He goes from this sour but then kind of likable guy. Nothing really changes. It's not like he knows something Moana doesn't, or he helps grow a vegetable or a plant, like when they're all starving at sea. I mean, that could have been a good thing to make his character stand out. Each character is brought in to just give a new dynamic, so it's not just Moana alone at sea this time, but the new characters add literally nothing. You could take every character away that they add to her crew, and nothing would change. And then there's this female demigod, Matajani. This is the most frustrating part of the movie, who's surrounded by bats, who, like Null from Venom the Last Dance, is like trapped in one location the whole movie. And at first I thought, okay, she's going to be the villain. But it turns out she just needs Moana to free her from this prison she's in. Where that is, I'm still not sure. And then at the end, you don't even see her get freed after they free the islands or whatever. It's super disappointing. And just the fact that she isn't even a villain, or the movie doesn't really have a physical antagonist, I'm just like, what the fuck? Where are the stakes? In my opinion, the story needed to be way more intense and interesting. Maui being captured from the beginning, like Thor and Thor Ragnarok, is a great setup, but they should have kept Matajani as the villain through the whole film. Even if they want to give her some resolve at the end, where maybe in order to free herself, she wants to sacrifice these islands or drown one so she can be free. The whole film, she should be a villain. She's ominously bad at the beginning, but then it's very clear she's not a villain, and it just takes away all the stakes and all the fear I would have for Moana or Maui if they're out in the ocean singing and shit. I need to feel there's some danger, that someone does not want them there. And just some random god of the oceans or nature or whatever does not do the trick. It's not this physical entity that actually feels dangerous. If they kept Matajani as the villain, the movie would be better. And they could still have her have a change of heart at the end, but just keep her as this villainous presence throughout. Because as it is, it's like there's nothing really working against them, except the physical force of the ocean. Which, I'm sorry, if it's a Disney movie with all these fantasy elements, that's so boring. You're making this natural survival movie with all these existing elements in this world, which is so weird. Disney would have been better off just making a movie that's visually stunning about a girl trying to get a raft across the ocean. A Life of Pi type movie, I imagine. But it's really great to have these fantasy elements, just make them work. Another thing that absolutely sucks is the music. There is not one inspired song here, and the worst thing is none of the songs feel like they fit the tone of the movie. It is very hard to make a musical with great memorable songs, but at the end of the day, I just kept thinking the music here was incredibly distracting. Where in Moana 1, it worked. Each song in Moana 1 served a purpose, and kind of showing how this is Moana's journey. How Far I'll Go was a great song that reflected her destiny and desire to go off this island. She knew she can do something better. Shiny was a fun, quirky song, kind of those silly, like, villain song moments that reminded me of The Little Mermaid. You have You're Welcome, which was the boasting, brash song that represented Maui. And there were many other songs, but here none of them feel like they serve a purpose or have a soul to them. They're just there to fill the gaps of time, and I feel like this movie would have been better if there was no music, if it was just a straight-up fantasy family adventure movie. The music is simply just incredibly distracting here. Even the kids might find that the songs aren't that great. Go Beyond and Get Lost were the only two that really had a catchy rhythm. The rest just felt so forced, and like I couldn't wait for them to be over. There's even parts where they're saying, "You're not singing, are you?" And Moana's like, "Yeah, we're gonna sing." And it's like, you can tell, even the people who are making this movie are like, it doesn't work. It just is so off, this film. And there are other great animated movies out there, and I think a movie like this year, The Wild Robot, kind of shows you can make a mature movie that both kids and adults will like, and it doesn't have to be so grounded. That was a sci-fi movie, and it worked. I think Moana 2 is just embarrassing, where The Wild Robot is emotional, it's funny, it's well acted, animated, and written. It's beautiful to look at. This movie is just so frustrating. The plot goes nowhere. It is full of exposition. The music is boring. It's very bland to look at. There's no villain. I didn't really care about the heroes. Even with such a vibrant animation style, it's just kind of ugly and boring, so I wouldn't really recommend this film. Maybe young kids will like it, but this movie is nothing special. It is a very big disappointment because I did think the first Moana, I didn't love that movie, but I did understand why people loved it because it has a really cool design. It did something new that other Disney films haven't done before. This movie is just like the first one, but way worse. So if you're going to make a sequel, it has to be better. It has to add, you have to create new environments. Look at Avatar: The Way of Water. Took everything Avatar did, but added to it. Moana just subtracts from the first. So I really don't like it. I don't recommend it. Let me know what you guys thought. I hope I'm not being too harsh, but I really thought this was almost worse than Wish, the Disney film. At least that movie was cheesy fun. It was terrible, but cheesy. Let me know what you guys think of this. Thanks so much for watching.